Hi, guys. We are back at it with another episode of Libation and Vibration. I have Stephanie here with me, the cyber Latina queen. And introduce yourself, Steph.
Hey, so my name is Stephanie Aceves. I currently work at a software company overseeing a team of product managers. But yeah, I grew up in LA, made a career out of ethical hacking, and now work leading a team of folks that develop software to prevent the hackers.
Yep, we need that. Other than Sally Mae, we need that.
We need it. We need it. Sometimes it's
Right.
scary.
Yeah. So my drink of choice today, my libation that was giving me joy, especially lately, is my chai latte from downstate Newburgh, located in Newburgh, New York. And
And
Steph, what do you have?
mine, I'm a boba addict, like 10 years deep. So I have this Korean banana milk boba. I purposely waited to like put the straw in, but it is from a business out here in Miami called Hotline
Nice.
Boba. Honestly, unsurprisingly, it's the best boba. Actually, probably surprisingly, it's the best boba I've ever had.
Mm,
And I say that having had boba in LA and all these places, I have not had it in Taiwan or Korea, but this is
that
real good.
that's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, so Steph, let's get into it. What and when did you get started in your career? Like, what told you, like, all right, this is what I want to do? Did you have some falls, or did you have some moments where you're just like, I think this is what I want to do?
Yeah. Awesome. So I've always been excited for the future, I'll say. And when I was a kid, I was definitely more on the nerdy side. So I
Mhm.
remember after school, I'd go like spend hours on the internet on College Board. I know how it
Mm.
sounds, but that's the facts. Like I love taking personality tests to see what careers would align. But the reality is, I actually tried a lot of things and didn't love them and tried to fail fast. So I actually applied to university under like a chemical engineering degree.
Mm.
And at the time, I think I wanted to study chemistry
Mhm.
because I was really into the arts and like sciences. But in those moments, like science was a more practical, less risky career.
Right.
Uh, I had a mentor that encouraged me to check out computer science with an emphasis on video game design to kind of blend the two.
Mm.
Loved the computer science part, was terrible at the game side, so I think I lasted in that emphasis for like a semester. We had to like pass a video game for our midterm. But
Oh.
I tried a pre-med track like in high school. I tried an architecture class. Like I tried a lot of different things, and ultimately I just started to focus on the things that I really enjoyed doing, and computer
Mhm.
science was one of them. So software engineering. But even that, like by my junior year of college, I was ready to jump ship because I just didn't want to be behind a computer
Yeah.
like all day, every day. I wanted
Yeah.
to explore, do more things. And I had a professor that introduced me to some folks in consulting at EY, and I started my career in
Yeah.
consulting, and that turned into career in hacking. Like it's just a lot of nurturing curiosities. So the hacking side, I think I took an elective. So I was on scholarship at school. And
Okay.
yeah, girl. So we did, I had a merit scholarship for grades, like for academics, but I always wanted to make the most of the course load. So I would take electives just to like say, okay, like if the universities give me free money, I'm going to try to like rack
Do
it
it
up.
all. Right.
And so I took like a singing class. I took makeup for motion pictures and like learned how to do bruising. But I also took the intro to hacking class because I wanted to learn how to pick a lock. And that ultimately launched the career.
Wow.
So yeah, it was like, it's just a lot of like sticking, like you're kind of like failing fast and exploring
Mhm.
things that are interesting. And if they're interesting enough that you're like motivated to keep at them, continuing down that lead, but also like not being scared to pivot. Like
Right.
computer science games was supposed to be the perfect blame or blend of engineering and art, and girl, it was not. I
No.
was, I
Okay.
was, I was like one of the classes. It was like an analogy to World of Warcraft, and I was like, I
Mhm.
have no
No
idea.
idea what's going on.
No, no,
That's
no.
okay. That's okay. I listen. To this day, there are certain video games that I used to play as a kid, and like my boyfriend plays them, and I'm like, this is not how it was. Like, when did all these controllers and all these buttons came about, and how does this do this now? Like, and to me, I'm like, I'm learning step by step. But when it comes to how you like just got started in the game, just like, oh, I want to pick a lock, and now it's like generated who you are.
Yeah.
That's insane. And I feel like that goes for a lot of people. Is when you find this passion, it's because you wanted to try one thing and you wanted to
Yeah,
accomplish
absolutely.
one thing, and now you're accomplishing so much more than that. So I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's super awesome. All
Yeah, I
right.
think that's yeah.
Well, I mean, what inspired you other than like, okay, I want to get into engineering, like as well as working with computers, like what inspired you? Was there somebody that made you feel like, yeah, this is why I want to pick a lock?
Funny. So not for the lock picking, but computer or sorry, Criminal Minds, I was like obsessed with. I don't have an appetite for these shows anymore. Like
Right.
now I'm an adult and I'm like, dang, these things are based in real life. Like I don't
Yes.
necessarily need to know all the things that happen. But when you're like young and naive, you're like, what a
Oh
fun story.
wow.
But there was a character on Criminal Minds, Penelope, that was like the
Yes.
female like techie, and I
Love
remember
that.
her being so cool. Like I just idolized her. But I think what really kind of hooked me in was just feeling like I enjoyed it. Like I thought it was
Mhm.
so fascinating. I remember the computer science classes were like interesting, but like when I got into cybersecurity, and this is God, I graduated in 2014. Oh my God, 10 years ago. So like 10 years ago, like they didn't have like information technology programs like they do now, or
Yeah.
like they didn't have
Mhm.
ethical hacking or InfoSec the way that they have it now. I just remember like being obsessed, and I would go home to my roommates and they're studying marketing or they're studying communications or business. And I'd be like, listen, I can show you how to do this on your computer and this. And I just found out this. But I was always drawn to technology. Like I said, I was always at home on the computer after school. So I was always kind of tinkering with things, but pursuing was naturally interesting, and kind of going with it, I think, was the ultimate driver.
Okay. Okay. All right. What did your journey look like? Like, was it an up and down kind of journey? Was it more linear than anything? Like, what did your journey look like for you once you said, okay, this is what I want to
I think it's changed a lot.
do? Mm,
So I do a lot of reflection kind of on what I'm progressing in and if I'm okay with that, like even the rate of like how quickly I'm progressing, but also just the direction it's going.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I've pulled, I'll say, some like insights or like trends, not to be over analytical, but
Right.
I have a tendency to like again, I like love the looking like forward looking, looking at the future, right? So when I was a kid, that was what
Mm,
school am I going to go to?
yeah.
As an adult, it was like, what career is that? Does that like look like, and what's the next role? But
Mm,
what I've noticed is like I don't ever really hard and fast like tie myself to the goal.
mm-hmm.
So when I was in high school, like I was obsessed with Stanford. And by the time I was applying to schools, I applied to Stanford, but I got into USC early admission, and then that was the thing that I was obsessed with. And so
Mm,
the goal kind of changed. And I was okay with that. Like it was just, I had to set a goal to inform direction, but the goal like looks different when you get there because you
true.
kind of have to tap into more intuitive connection with what is it that I really want now that I'm close and within reach. Like, was the goal when it was further away? Now that I'm up close, is it what I imagined it to be, or is there something else? And so, because of that, I try to do these kind of checkpoints. And it's been linear when I'm in a role, if that makes sense. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's been very kind of
Up and
non
down.
traditional, non linear, where I've made pivots that are not necessarily um, like the next step, but I also don't agree that there is a next step. So it's just been very, I'll say, forward looking but present. If I know that's like a weird
No,
contradiction,
it's
you're
right.
looking enough to make sure you're moving,
Right.
but you're also connecting to where you're at this point in time and saying, what are my needs? And I think
Right.
a big part of that too is just like really reflecting on what your priorities are. I know that when COVID, actually after COVID, when I first moved to Miami, I did a lot of reflection and started working with like a life coach.
Mm,
And she got me to the point where I was stepping outside of like the everyday and looking at, okay, well, what does it mean to have a successful career? Like, what is my why? What is enough? And you start to evaluate these kind of bigger things. And I started to recognize, like, I do have more priorities outside of just career, and I wanted to make space to nurture those. So, like, again, that goal changed, but it's all about kind of adjusting for the phase and the moment you're in.
Right. It's more like adapting,
Yeah.
realizing, okay, this is what I wanted to do. I got here. Now this is what I want to alter about it a little bit. And like you said, make space for more things, which is great. I think that sometimes we forget that once we get in a career, it's like, okay, we're in here. Now, what joy is that going to bring you? What are you going to make space for that makes you happy as well? Not just a career. I like that.
Yeah.
I like
I
that.
think it's important to ask yourself, like, the so that, right? So, like, I want to be an executive so that blank. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like your why, right? And so even something as trivial as, like, I want to, work 5 days a week so that I have weekends free. Like,
Right.
you really have to start the conversation from the perspective of, like, what type of life do you want
That's
to
what I
have? What do you
want.
contribute? Career, like, not for nothing. Like, there's a lot that we can do now, especially with the internet. And I know I sound like an old person, like, the internet has changed the world, but there's just so much that we can do that it's easier now than it's ever been to find a career that fits the life that you want, as opposed to the other way
Mhm.
around.
I like that. I totally agree with that. It's definitely a little bit easier than how it was for our parents coming up. Just like
Yeah.
on the spectrum of saying, okay, this is what I can do now because I know that it will advance me to this place. But like you're right with the so and that. I tell my clients that a lot of the time is that like if you can go, I want to do this so that I can lose this amount of weight
Yep.
or get closer to God or to, be better for my kids.
Yep.
That is the important part. And like you said, that is your why. So I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. All right. My next question to you is how is your self care, self love journey going?
That's a good one, because I think, again, like, I've done a lot of introspection, especially it's the
Yes.
beginning of the year. Um, I have moments where I'm a lot more balanced, and I think
Mhm.
the holidays is, like, just pulls me out of that.
Yeah.
And I think I've struggled, to be honest, like, with accepting that that's part of the process. But, in a lot of the reflection actually from this weekend, I spent all of Sunday with my boyfriend, kind of reflecting on 2023 and planning, like, what we want to do personally and in our relationship for 24. And self love for me right now is really just stillness,
Mm,
um,
mm,
because I know, like, I'm very analytical and I have a very logical, more masculine energy side for work. And I love that. But I'm also equally creative. And I need boredom. Like, that is the main ingredient in creativity for me. And
yes.
my holiday schedule, like, girl, we were in Miami. We were in town for like 1 week since October. Like, it was just crazy. We did a family vacation to Tanzania. Then I had work trip, and straight from the work trip, it was like Thanksgiving at my boyfriend's family's place up in Connecticut. Then
Mm.
straight to LA, and then a bachelorette in Palm Springs, and then it's Christmas. Like, we just got
It-
back from a wedding in San Diego. So I like, I opened this saying I kind of struggled with it, but I think more recently I look at it and I'm like, well, would I trade anything? Like, would I have changed
mm,
it? And the answer
yeah.
really is no. Because the sacrifices or the compromises that I feel like I made in the space of self-care
Hmm.
also were, like, in compromise of something that I wanted more, right?
Mm,
So
okay.
it's okay. And I think, like, I work in product management, which basically means all day, every day, we're looking at things that we could be doing and prioritizing them.
Awesome.
And it's looking at how to, like, manage finite resources. And one of the most important, actually, if not the only most important finite resource that we have just in our lives is time.
Mm.
And so I always try to, like, connect and ask myself, is how I'm spending my time in alignment with my values? And
Oh,
that one, that one's a
okay.
big one. right? I think that's where you start to like really get to, do you like yourself? It's like, is my time a reflection of what I value? And it doesn't have to be every day, has to like follow the right balance. But when
Right,
you take like a bird's eye view, my holidays are always busy and I might not do some of this like rest and self-care because I'm prioritizing time with family.
right.
And the holidays are like protected sacred time for me where it's time with family. So
Mhm.
I'm actually okay with that, which gives me, I think, a little bit more stillness when I'm like, I should have just taken some rest because I'm stressed or whatever it is that I'm going through.
Right. No, I agree to that. I think stillness was my word in
Oh,
the month
really?
of like November and December. So when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, we're definitely aligned right now. Stillness is something that I feel like most women struggle with, is that we don't understand when to really just like enjoy the present and just sit there and enjoy the present. Not let me, what am I supposed to do tomorrow? What am I supposed to do today? None of that. Just sit there and enjoy the present. And you're
Yep.
right. What time that you serve or what you serve your time with has to align with what's worth it to you. Now,
Yep.
if you keep putting in time to things that you know are not going to be forever and they're going to be temporary, and you're putting in so much time into it, then what are you telling yourself?
Yep.
So I love that. I'm going to jot that down in the mind, and that's going to be on a sticky note. And like, I feel like, yeah, that was line. That was a lie.
I
I
love it.
swear.
I love it. Yeah, that one, like, I just remember thinking, like, because you get to the point where, like, I sit a lot with, like, I don't love it, but like, I'll observe shame, right? Like, if you ever
Yes.
read Brene Brown's works, like, I love what she writes about, and I don't think shame is like this big scary thing anymore. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
sit and I notice it and I notice shame and fear in a lot more places. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times for me, shame comes because I don't agree with a decision that I'm making, or at least how it's being portrayed. And
Mm-hmm.
so how do you get to a point where like I like to think like if I had to defend my actions, would I be comfortable defending them? Or am I doing something for something that I'm not willing to stand behind?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that goes in accordance with your time. Because like at the end of the day, you're defending your time choices to yourself. And
Yes.
we get so much, like I think it was, I moved to Miami in 2021. And when I got here, I had a couple friends, but like I spent a lot of time alone and girl, I loved it. Like I don't miss the bad part of the pandemic, but like I please don't hit me up.
Yup.
I'm home Friday. Don't talk. Like I was just going through like I just want to be home and I want to wake up
Yes.
early and go to yoga.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you have that like uninterrupted time to be selfish, you don't
Yes.
have social obligation. You start to realize where your priorities actually are. And
Mm-hmm.
I pray that like everyone gets the opportunity to have that type of insight at some point in their lives. But you
Yes.
start to realize like how much time you're spending in things that don't align with your mission, like your purpose,
Yep.
just because like that's how it's been done. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to like take a look and reflect and be like, this is how I'm spending my time. Like, but I have all these other things that I want to be doing and
Mhm.
I'm not doing them.
Yeah.
And are the things that I'm doing more important than the things I'm not doing? So
Girl, you was speaking the truth. Speaking the truth. I feel like I moved out of my parents' house in 2020. Um, and it was because I needed dual space. I needed a space for myself and my dog, but I also needed space to do my job. And I just came across this space, and at that, it wasn't this apartment; it's an apartment upstairs. And I'm like, "Oh, this is beautiful." But I wonder if there's a downstairs. Sure enough, look, there's a downstairs, and I saw the place, and I was like, "Oh, this is well within my budget. There's no way God's gonna actually put this in my path." Sure enough, I reach out and I'm like, "Hey, I would love to see the space. Oh, we can meet tomorrow." Okay, cool. Now I had been
um,
praying and fasting and praying and fasting because I knew that it was time for me to remove myself, not just from living underneath my parents, but I needed something for myself to be proud of, but to be in my own mind about who I am trying to become.
yep.
Sure enough, saw the apartment. I was like, this is it. This is mine. And I said it as I was walking through this apartment. This is my apartment. And I'm going to put this there and I'm going to put that there. And my landlord at the time was looking at me like, wait, 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 wait. I'm like, how much do you want? When can we sign the papers? because this is
Yep.
what I want and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And he's like, all right, cool. Sure enough, 1 week later, sign the papers. And when I tell you I was in my space, first of all, I'm not paying rent just to be outside. I'm paying rent to be in my
I
house.
really, it's different when you like where you live.
So
It's like,
like
I just don't want to leave.
I don't want to leave. And I love my apartment. I love my space. I love being in my space. And I didn't realize that until I moved into my apartment, I was serving my time with things
Yeah.
that did not align with me. I was like, I'm not stepping out. What am I going to a barbecue for?
Yeah.
But what why am I gonna be around people that I know I don't need to be around? Or
Yeah.
why am I going out just to, drink and then have to drive home? No, I'm okay. I can have a glass of wine at home and be comfortable in my house. And it's like
Yep.
you start to notice the things that you were serving that really had no purpose for you. So I
Yep.
love that. We hear, Stephanie. We
There you
hear.
go.
All right. So my next question is, all right. So a couple weeks ago on Instagram, you were talking about how you were speaking about how you were being vulnerable in a professional workplace.
Hmm.
What was going through your head in that moment? Like I know it has to be weird for you to be vulnerable in a workplace, especially a workplace that's full of men.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had shared a story online about like, it was the first time I had ever called a meeting, and it just happened to be, mind you, it's a meeting, we're all on camera and it's all executives.
Mm.
And I'm emotional as fuck, like for what it's worth. I'm definitely like very in tune with my emotion, but
Yes.
it's come out at work, or it didn't before then.
Right.
Um, and it was something where I was like growing like more and more frustrated because like the leadership that we had had at the time was very disconnected from the reality of execution and wasn't to like
Mm.
listen. So I was like, but you're not like who is doing this? Like, and before I knew it, I started tearing up. And at first, again, connected to shame, I was mortified. I was like, I cannot
Yeah.
believe I just did this.
Purpose.
Am I going to lose credibility? I had so much fear around what that would result in.
Hmm.
Um, and ultimately, like it ended up being fine. Like the guy, my boss at the time, reached out after and realized like, okay, maybe his approach was not the right approach. And I had a lot of the other executives like reach out and kind of offer support and say, hey, we feel the passion. We're also trying to figure out how this is. Let us know if we can help. We can see
Wow.
how much here. It was a lot like I don't know, I felt a lot safer than I think I would have felt. I started my
Mm.
career like very much keeping Steph distant
From that everybody.
from work. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
I have my whole social life, but like they weren't about to meet that side of me. Like I
Right.
was just very much like who I am.
Professional. You're keeping it professional as you
Especially
should.
like my mom, she retired as a CBO, and so
Mm.
she built herself up and was like very like well respected in her field.
Hmm.
Um, and in their time, like in my mom's time, it was very much like work is work. There is no like there is a delineation, like there's not a lot of
Between the
overlap.
two.
And
Yeah.
so the guidance that I got from her, which again relevant to her time, was just kind of keep these things separate. And now, mind you, please don't be messy. I'm not saying to be messy. Like don't do any of that.
Right.
But I started actually finding more fulfillment at work when I joined my current company because I finally started to connect with teammates, like colleagues that were not like me. So like I used to like I love them. I had a friend that used this term and I've stolen it from her. But she like called them the dads. And so like I worked with the dads. Like there's dead ass a picture of me with like 40 something men, and we're all in like golf polos, and I had my hair in a ponytail. Girl, I look like one of the dads. I look like a man. Um, like I saw that, I was like, yeah. So, but I had one of them just like we went to like a holiday party, and I'm like, fuck it, like I'm just gonna let him know like who I am, what I'm about. Like I'm not about to hide this. I'm over it. Like I'm over it.
Right.
And just that kind of like that peer connection,
Hmm.
and almost his sponsorship, I started to like slowly like a hermit crab kind of like peeking its way out, start to show more and more of myself. And then I also noticed kind of like on social media, there were some content influencers that were posting a lot about cybersecurity, but were also just very authentically themselves. There's one
Mm-hmm.
in particular who like I admire. Her name is Taylor. Her handle is Digital Empress, and she's like Black, and she was pursuing a career in cybersecurity, but like in a very authentic way that I didn't allow myself to do at the time.
Mm,
Um, and I remember seeing her stuff, and in my head was like, this doesn't compute. Like, you can't do both. Like, what the heck? And in my head, I'm also thinking, like, she's doing both. And I love it. Like, I'm obsessed with this. I want to know, like, how to do more of this. And she ended up being a really big inspiration for me. I don't even know if I've told her. I might have to hit her up after this. But she ended up being an inspiration for me to just show up more unapologetically and just be like, this is who I am. And the more I started to lean into that, the more I realized, like, we're all alike. Like even
yes.
me with dads, like we're so similar. We have similar interests. Like we're humans at the end of the day.
Right.
And mind you, interests. Like I'm not doing the same things they're doing. I've joined a fantasy league. I won the first round just because like beginner's luck, but I did terrible. Like I, we don't have the same interests per se, but we can
Right.
connect at deeper levels. Um,
Yes.
and I think when I did that, I started to show up and celebrate my differences in a way that
Mhm.
invited them to celebrate them with me, and all of a sudden it
Mm,
changed like my experience and my narrative, right? Like I think again, I don't want shame to be the theme of this, but like I would hide a lot of that because it was
okay.
different, you know? And
Right.
it's like, well, what are they going to care about? Like, oh, me going out to this spot, or me doing makeup, or me caring about fitness, or like all these other things that at the time were priorities for me, that I felt like they couldn't relate to, or like even things with my Hispanic culture and like family. Um, and the more I kind of just said, well, shit, I'm going to tell them anyway because that's me. The
Right.
more that they started to get to know me, and I think that created a type of connection that then honestly helped me advance my career, but more importantly, helped me feel like I belonged, which
Mm.
inadvertently also advanced what I was trying to go for.
I like that. I feel like we all should celebrate our differences. I know
Yeah,
like society doesn't allow us to, but we have to make it our business to celebrate our differences because that's what makes this world a melting pot. Like growing up in New York, and I know being in Miami, you know what the meaning of a melting pot means. Is that there's so
yeah,
many authentics and ethnicities, and there's so many different cultures that are in one space that's creating this big
yeah.
space. So it's like it's it's important. I think it's very important to celebrate your differences because it makes you
I
who you
agree.
are, and then it allows other, like you said, it allows people to know who you are, and then it made you feel comfortable with being this woman in this space, and then allowing them to know and acknowledge, okay, that she is this woman and she's in this space. So that's
It's
great.
like there's a too, like there's a level of trust that's important, right? Like
Right.
people trust what they feel like they know.
Oh,
Okay.
right.
And so by withholding, I'm like robbing both parties of like the opportunity to create a trust based connection, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Yes.
like, yeah, I'm like, my things might be different, but like in not sharing those, I think it works against my ultimate end goal. And
Yeah.
so there's a big component of trust that's important where it's like, you kind of have to take a leap of faith. I remember being terrified, but like, you like, so for the longest time, I was the only woman on the team, and I was young, like I said. But I remember I was like, I'm just going to show them who Steph is. So one year was my birthday, and I put on a tiara, and I was like this is me in my team meeting, and I had a tiara on, and they're like, oh, it's her. Like it's just a very Stephanie thing to do. That I'm like, I want them to see like who I am, and so one of the things that I think about a lot and I pride myself on is the way that I act at work now is very much so the way that I act with my friends and home. And I think
Mm,
that's what being unapologetic is. It's you're going to
yes.
see the full. Sometimes I'm a little bit more chaotic, sometimes I'm very organized, sometimes I am emotional, but you see a very authentic, still professional. And I say
Hmm.
professional because like there are definitely lines like it's work. um
Boundaries.
but like you get to see who I am, and you get to see my values as a leader. And I think that's almost more vulnerable. And I think that was what was so scary in that one circumstance is like, oh shit, like, yeah, I'm my little sensitive self to my girlfriends and my boyfriend. And like, I can be like, let's talk about feelings. But at work, like,
Not like that.
that's your boss. Like, what are we doing?
I'm glad that that experience got to like change your overall experience at your job, and then it also not only does it change you, but it changes your coworkers, how
Yeah.
they speak to people, how they present themselves. Taking other people's emotions into consideration, and I feel like the world needs to do a little bit more of that, especially lately. So I know we were speaking about family and, said, making time for your family and whatnot. Why? Oh, sorry, not why. As a Latina, how hard was it to explain to your parents what you were going to be doing for a career?
So it's so funny. Like I work at a company that so I'll just say I work at a company called Tanium. And to this
Mhm.
day, actually I think now they know, but they used to call it titanium for years. And most people's parents do, I think. Just
Most Hispanic parents would do something like that.
yeah. But you know, when I first got into the field, it was really new. So like I started work in cybersecurity the year that the Sony hack happened.
Oh,
And so it was like a huge shift. Now Target had already happened, so people were talking about it.
right.
Um, but again, like I wasn't working yet. I was in college and I don't think I really even understood what was going on.
Comprehended. Yeah.
But 2014 was the year of like the infamous attack.
Yeah.
And so that made it easier to explain because I could talk to my parents and, and say like, hey, like, well, what are you working on? Well, my like we work on helping find the people that did that. So it was a really like it wasn't too hard. Now some of the nitty gritty and the ins and outs, I think they know enough. My mom, like I mentioned, so they were both of my parents were born in Mexico, but my mom moved here when she was like 4 and was back and forth between Mexico and the States.
Hmm.
She did actually get a college education in the States and she
Wow.
studied accounting, so she's worked in business, not in IT, but she understood, like she knows how businesses operate in the US.
Right.
My dad, he went to school up to the 6th grade, got to the States when he was 17, he was working as a server, but then like got his real estate license and now sells homes. And so he doesn't have that same context,
Right.
but for the most part, like I actually pride myself on being able to communicate to them in layman's terms kind of what it is that I do. They don't need to know the details, but I think the mark of a good communicator is like being able to explain it to like a wide audience. So I think in the beginning they were, I don't know, my one of my girlfriends used to just like, she's in the arts and she would be like, you're just like the Olivia Pope of cybersecurity, and I was like, we're gonna go with that.
That's
um
the label. That's
I
the label we're choosing.
I loved it. Trust me, I did not fight it. I was like, I like that brand. Let's go with that. But yeah, I think I was kind of in a position or like fortunate enough to like there was enough going on in current events to kind of articulate what I was doing.
Nice. I don't know. And the reason why I ask is, as a Latina, when trying to explain to parents the field that you're going into, and they don't fully understand, like, wait, so you're not going to be a doctor, not going to be a
Yeah,
lawyer. It's like
yeah.
having the stigma that you have to be this big thing because your parents are coming from where they're coming from.
And
Less
I
than.
think that's important to talk about too, because like I mentioned, like I studied I minored in fine art, right? And like I have a
Right.
very creative side. And I look back and reflect and I'm like, okay, so why did I end up in computer science and like in engineering? Why did I end up in cybersecurity and tech? It
Mhm.
was a risk-based mentality, right? Like parents, immigrants, like we're thinking, how do you secure a job? And my fixation at that time was a stable job. So engineering was like, I remember I wanted to be a doctor. At first I wanted to be a vet because I loved animals and that was like a known profession, right? I feel like every kid that
Me
likes a dog
too.
wants to be a vet. So we need to start educating like there are careers with animals. But like I like to this day, if you like animals at one point in your life, I'm
I
convinced you
want to be a
wanted to be a vet.
vet. Mm-hmm.
So I like it was that, and then I was like, I remember it's funny how we think about identity as kids, but as a kid, I already started to identify as like a high achiever or whatever the heck I thought that meant. And so
Mm,
there were certain careers that fit that label. And
right.
like labels is also super important to talk about.
Yes.
But like doctor was there. And so it started actually with, I mentioned like I wanted to study to be a doctor. And I went to some conference, found out that the divorce rate was like 90 something percent. And I was like, no, I want to get married. I want to stay married. Again, lead with like your life.
Right.
So I look at that, and like my senior year of high school, I remember I was applying to schools under engineering because I started to really enjoy like math and knew I didn't want to study pure math and knew I
Mm,
didn't want to just study science. And I saw like chemical engineering as an avenue for, again, like a successful career.
right.
But at the same time, I was creating an art portfolio for AP art and
Mm,
wondering like, what if I pursue art? And to this day, like I've picked up painting again, and there's still that like, okay, so with immigrant parents, we think of more traditionally safe careers.
right.
So is there a world where, and I know there are like, I have friends who have parents that were also immigrants that have pursued less stable or less safe or traditional careers. But yeah, I think it definitely does have a big impact. I think my parents, like even to this day, my dad like is still, he supports, I'm fortunate, I've always had their support. Sometimes they think
Mm.
I'm crazy, they think I'm batshit because I come up with these wild ideas, but I've always had their support. That being said, I know the bounds of like careers that make them feel safe. And I
Mm,
know as a child that it did influence a lot of my decisions. I'm an
mm.
adult, so I can change it at any point in time, and I haven't. But it is something that I think we like, it's, first gen, like, daughters of immigrants, we think about. It's, you start thinking again about like, okay, who are my parents? I look to them for approval. What do they?
Validation. It's like
Yeah.
you're looking for acceptance in something that
Yeah.
you truly want to do, and it's like you're looking for your parents to validate them. And I will say we both are lucky to have parents who have supported our dreams, who had listened to us rant, and has still been by our sides through and through. My mom still to this day is like, you're gonna build your own house. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a vet, and then I wanted to be an architect. And she's like, you still gonna build your own house? And I'm like, yes. Just because I didn't get the degree to do it, don't mean that I won't make the plans happen. But it's like
That's hilarious.
it's great to have that support. And
Yeah.
spinning off of that, is that part of the reason why you started grants and scholarships for Latinas that are trying to, accomplish the same thing?
Yeah, so I think it informs it. I recognize that there's not like, not everyone has the same level of privilege that I've had.
Right.
So my parents, again, they moved to the States, but they actually did really well for themselves. Like they took calculated risk and were able to put me through college. Like again, part scholarship, but at the end of the day, that's not everyone's reality.
Right.
And so the scholarship that I give every year is through an organization called Great Minds in STEM, and I received a scholarship through them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the scholarship that I received through them actually also led to my first internship in software engineering. And so it really helped me kind of place myself. But I knew immediately that I wanted to like commit to also developing generations to come. And so I was very intentional about looking for women, specifically Latinas,
Mm-hmm.
that were not just like dedicated on the work, but had we'll say the desire and felt empowered to also like pay it forward. And so I was looking specifically for Latinas who took what they were given, whether a lot or a little, and amplified it in a way that improved the community as a whole. So I
Mm-hmm.
look for that still. Like I just reviewed applications a few months ago, and the latest scholarships were delivered in October.
Nice.
Um, but the women that get it are always, they're always very similar in that like it's not enough to be the only. It's I'm here,
Mm,
but I'm turning and I'm bringing people with me. And I've already proven that through how I'm spending my time in college or how I spent my time in high school. You
mm-hmm.
know, like I don't look for the folks that want to be the only. I actually think that's a very toxic
It
approach
is.
to doing like to any type of advancement. So yeah, it's definitely taking kind of like the privilege that I have and recognizing. And I started small. Like I think the first scholarship I gave was like $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the grand scheme of like what a university education costs now, girl,
Listen,
it's nothing.
that's something better than nothing. $1,000 is something.
And so
Listen.
I just knew like I always wanted to pay my part and to continue. And in the first few scholarships, I actually connected the women to each other so that they could kind of build their relationships. I
Mm,
kept that part up, like that networking. But yeah, like it's specifically the profile of the woman who wants to pay it forward.
I like that. Listen, listen. Cheers to that. That's great. There's not a lot of women doing that. I can say that. And it's like very important for us to make sure that we can give back in any way possible. Like you said, pay it forward. I'm a track coach right now, and I told myself when I graduated high school that I'm going to come back and I'm going to pay it forward. And
Oh my
it
gosh,
took
that's
me
so
some time. Thank you. It took me some time. A lot of hoopla going on, but I can say that once you get in that role and you can pay it forward and you can help kids out, oh my gosh, it is so fulfilling. You create these bonds. You you're in a sense not only just molding these children, but you are also helping them see that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help, and I think that's something that we all struggle with. Is that it's I, and it's me
Yep,
on my own team, and it's like ain't nobody do greatness alone.
yep.
No one. So I
I
like
agree.
that. Okay,
I
I see
think
you. Go
that
ahead.
hyper independence that we talk about nowadays, like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it doesn't actually help our cause.
No.
Like, everyone's got their goals. I think the better that you align yourself with your goals, the better you align yourself with a team and like people that are also aligned, and the faster you move
Yes.
and the further you go, right? Like it's I do think it's a lot of
Yeah.
and there's ways that we contribute individually, but I think it's more important to look like at the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. I that I agree with. I definitely agree with. Now, Steph, you can tell me. Steph, are you a spiritual woman?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then
I got my little I pull cards once a week.
yes.
I got the giraffe this week, so I have
Oh,
this is
okay.
the emperor in me.
I
So
love that.
yes, I'm very spiritual.
So the reason why I ask is because when I say sometimes we forget we want to say I. You can't do nothing of greatness by ourselves. And that man above has always has a plan in mind to make sure that we are doing exactly what we're meant to do. And I make it big and I make it my purpose to make sure that people remember that it's okay to ask for help. And even if it's not me and it's not somebody else, sit down with yourself and figure out who you're really supposed to be asked for help from. So that's why I ask.
I love that, and I think the more you start to sit with yourself, the more you realize you have the answers.
Oh
And like
yeah.
I think we tradition, or I wouldn't want to overgeneralize. I've noticed that in the female relationships I have in my life, like all of my girlfriends and all that stuff, like all these women, we tend to want to talk through things. And I know that men traditionally, and there's
Oh.
always, you know,
Mm-hmm.
let's not get people break the norm all the time,
Right.
but they're like men tend to isolate, and for me it's always been helpful to kind of share and process live and like do that in a kind of controlled way. But the more I started to introspect, the more I realized that part was actually less important. Like the communicating with friends, like
Yes.
sometimes it was like, I know I have the answer here. Sometimes the communicating with friends is almost looking for an external validation instead of trusting the vision. So, or like trusting your intuition.
Right.
So that all in that intuition, another way for like the higher consciousness, another way for to say God, like depending on how it is that you enter these conversations, there is a higher power and he is pulling these strings and he's got everything open and he's got like the plan.
Right.
There's like this nice balance of true surrender, and kind of like goal setting, having a vision, but not being so tied to the execution so that you leave the opportunity for it to happen the way that it's intended to. Like you have to let go of control.
Steph, we're friends. We are friends. That is literally exactly what I was going to say. Was
I
that
love that.
sometimes we have to make space for what is really for us. And in order for us to do that, yes, you come up with a plan and you say, this is my road, but understand that this might be the road that you created, but there's a completely different path that you are also on, and you have to make space for. You gotta make space for that tree that might come your way. You gotta make space for that rock that might come your way. You gotta make space for that fork that might come your way, right? So it's like, make space for it so you're not stressing the things that you can't control. Because when it comes for you and it is for you, you ain't got to fight for it. It's just going to be for you, you know? So thank you.
It's also like make space for like the meal that's on the road, right? Like I think a lot of times if we're too like fixated on the goal, you miss like, oh shit, like there's some good things happening on this path that I need to like
Yes.
deal with. Like I
Yes.
think a lot of times we think of surrender as surrender because like bad things could happen, but it's out of your control. So don't stress yourself.
Right.
Surrender because you're actually not really running the show here.
So,
You think you are. And I think so. I talked to my boyfriend about this recently. Like there's this balance of like the masculine and feminine energy when you're goal planning. And like I'm not
mm-hmm.
talking about like genders, right? We're talking
Right.
about creative, which is more traditionally like fluid, and that's the
Right.
feminine. Because like masculine energy is very goal oriented, it's very disciplined, it's very like task oriented. And
Right.
so I think about, we kind of talked about this a little bit with like career trajectory, but you have the goal, like that's the masculine, and you can create a plan, meaning you have the map and the directions, like the turns where you're going to take. You know
Mm-hmm.
what that does though? All it does is it really gives you like, it allows your brain to like click into the frequency where you know that that's possible. So you've now outlined the path and you know there's a path there. At the end of the day, when you're moving that way, the path does not look like what you planned. But because you believe there's a path now, because you took the time to outline how to get there, all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden God's gonna put stuff right in your path and it's going to be like, here's this other thing and here's this other thing.
Like,
Like you have to plan and exercise the masculine to give you the hope that like there is a way there, because then all of a sudden you tap into the frequency where everything is
it's
possible.
possible. Yes, Steph. Preach. Okay. I When we get off this call, we gonna talk. We gonna talk. No, that's absolutely correct. When you plan, you're telling yourself this is possible,
Yep.
and that you are more than willing to take the chance on it.
Yep.
Girl,
Yeah. You're
girl,
telling the universe too. You're telling God like I'm ready.
I'm ready. Thank you. And that's a conversation I just had with somebody else today. It was just like, when you make this plan, understand that it's your plan, but it ain't the plan. In
Yep.
that you are telling God when you make this plan, hey, hey, do you see me? I see you, you see me. Let's get to work. And you
Yep.
got to be willing to put in the work. You got to be willing to see what He sees. And
Yep.
that's all. I love that. I love it.
Love it.
Well, Steph, I know you're going to be talking in Australia soon. Are you excited about it?
I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm going to be out there end of March.
Nice. Now, what are you going out there to speak on?
Yeah, so I'm speaking at a conference, a cybersecurity conference. The talk that got approved is around like the data and trends around cybersecurity and risk.
Mm,
So very like career aligned.
okay.
We at like Tanium, so and I think this conversation is important to have because before I started doing these type of speaking engagements, I don't think I understood what it takes. So
Mm-hmm.
there's different types of talks. There's typically at a conference they'll do a request for presenters and or a call for presenters, a CFP, call for papers.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also talks that I've done that is like Tanium is sponsoring something, so we have paid for a seat. Okay, so
Okay.
like there's different types, and I do want people to know that because it's not like, and not to make it sound like I haven't earned my keep, but like there's also like a pay to play type way. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a very viable avenue where you get these seats, you get exposure, you also get practice. So this one
Mm-hmm.
is the first, which is like there was a request that was put out. I submitted an application, they reviewed it, they love it. And so now we're going on behalf of Tanium, but I'm going to be speaking on my own kind of content, my own thought leadership, and I'm presenting that. At the end of the day, we are doing it obviously in like a marketing capacity. So I
Right.
do the talk, I provide insights, hopefully with the intention of generating interest in our business. But super excited because I geek out. I love the stats. Like I just love. I think cyber is so fascinating. When you it's psychology, it's warfare. Like there's so many broader implications. So I love to just share that passion with folks and like get
Yes.
them excited. Especially you think about like it's not cyber goes beyond somebody hacking your phone and getting access to your bank account, right?
Right.
Cybersecurity is now like the grid. So like we want water, we want power, we want like not just electricity, like we want communication systems, we want like our search and rescue or fire department or all that to work. That's controlled by things that are connected to the internet. So it's got broader implications. And so being able to work with the people that are literally securing our world, I love it. And then you hear also like how companies and how businesses and governments are solving for these things. And
Right.
then it's, I don't know, you just, I always feel like I'm like so lucky and privileged to be in the room listening to the ways that companies are thinking about it. So yeah, that talk is, it's in Canberra. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I tried my Australian accent. Canberra, Australia. It's like 3 hours from Sydney.
Sydney.
Mhm.
Listen, put me in your suitcase. Put me.
I
I'll be in
know.
there like this. Put me in your suitcase.
Tell me why. Tell me why I had posted it on Instagram, and my dad calls me. He's like, "We were looking at flights." So he's like, I took them on a speaking trip to Colombia, and they loved it. So they're like all ready to come travel. So
That's something my parents will do.
yeah.
My
I was
parents
like,
would definitely do something like
I was
that.
like, okay, first of all, Dad, I don't even know when my flight is, so I'll let you know when I know, but please don't stress me out. No, but yeah, I think they're gonna tag along.
That's exciting. That's to have your parents be out in the audience listening, but also for you to get to speak on something that you're so excited about. Like your face just lights up. And I think
Yeah,
I'm so happy for you.
thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I really enjoy it.
Good. All right. So I'm going to ask you one more question.
All right.
Okay. Now you tell me. I want you to be honest. Okay.
Okay. That's honor. What is it? Pinky promise. Why did I just? This is like I'm a lot. My bad. My bad.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. All right. If you can tell your 15-year-old self something, what would it be?
Yeah. So if I could tell my 15-year-old self something, I'd tell her like perfect is boring. I think
Mm,
I spent a lot of time, and even today, like I I try, like my brain thinks in terms of systems and like I'll look at something and see how I
routine.
can repeat it and how to
Mm,
optimize it and like
right.
try to like master it so that I can almost like set it and forget it and things take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And so there's this part of my brain that's always looking for perfection. And I think for some time, like I started to almost like people used to, it's funny, this sounds so weird. People used to say like, "Oh, you're so perfect." And like they say it as a compliment. I
Right.
hate it. Like to this day, like it makes me cringe because it's like
Cringe.
makes me like perfect to me is I don't value perfection. Like again,
Hmm.
living in alignment with your values. I actually feel like perfection is kind of boring. Um,
Yes.
and so I would tell my 15-year-old Steph, stop focusing on perfection, focus on like the experience. Like focus on what
Mhm.
it feels like to be in this situation and make the decision, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, make the decision that feels right. Because I think for a lot of time, like a long time, like, and again, like my boyfriend and I in this reflection this weekend talked a
Mhm.
lot about mission. And one of the things that we talked about, like with my reflection was, you know, there's these labels that we assign or like even expertise that we come across. And when you're
Right.
learning something, you attach yourself to experts, you know, you listen to podcasts, you Google, you do all these things, and they
Right.
give almost a prescription of what it is to be that thing, to be perfect at that thing. But
Right.
in striving for perfection, I think there's this part that's a little bit of self abandonment because you stop listening to your intuition. So perfection, I'm
Mm.
like, listen to yourself. It's okay to be messy. It's not the end of the world to get something wrong. Like, that's where your wisdom and your life comes from. Like, that is living, not doing things right.
Honestly, I felt like you was talking to me just now because I am definitely a former perfectionist,
Yeah.
and like it's hard. You know, like you
It
said,
is.
I'm also very systematic. I am very routine type of person. It's like, you know, down to the T, down to my dog. Like she hears the alarm go off at 4:30, she's like, all right, that means we're waking up. You know, like that's how
4:30.
I am. Yes, girl. But it ain't like that right now. But just like, you know, I'm so routine, so systematic. And to me, in my mind, it's like, you have to be like this. In order for you not to fail, you have to be like this. And it's
Yeah.
like we were talking about earlier, you got to be ready for the rock that comes in the road. You got to be ready for the tree that comes in the road, the meals that also, you know, the blessing of that. So it's like learning not to be perfect all the time and to take in the boringness of what other people would seem boring is okay.
Yep. I think,
And
yeah.
God,
No, I was gonna say, I think for me, perfectionism was a way to like feel safe and feel in control, right?
exactly.
It's like, girl, let it go. Like, be messy. I mean, like
Yes.
messy, like get things wrong. Don't be messy.
I last year my quote of the year was I'm choosing violence. And not like not like choosing violence as in actual violence or you know trying to be messy, but like I'm choosing violence as far as disrupting my own being,
Yep.
disrupting what I know is safe, you
Oh, I
know.
love
So it's
that.
like allowing yourself to choose violence and step out of your comfort zone. And it
Yep.
worked out. I got a boyfriend of my dreams.
Aw.
Like it it's weird to me what I have disrupted,
Yeah.
but what blessings have come from it.
Yep.
So it's like you got to do that, and I'm glad that I chose violence last year.
I've actually never thought about it in that way, but like I think I somehow ended up like when I had my big year of growth when I first got to Miami, I feel like it was similar where it's like I chose a harder path over and over just to like explore. Like there was a part of me that kind of the curiosity was like, I just need to know, like, what
Hmm.
happens if I take this route? And like it was the more violent path, if you will. But it leads to a lot of self discovery and a lot of growth. And then again, you get to like the core of like, what are my values? Am I aligning according to them? I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my God, I love that. It's funny my philosophy, like when I first started working with this life coach, she was like, what do you want to work on? And I told her, I was like, I want to learn how to set boundaries with grace. That was my theme like years
Mm.
ago.
Oh
Um,
my God. I love that.
I like have both, like I said, like I can be a sap, I could be all sweet, but like don't get it twisted. I could also come correct. You know, you like I've
Right.
never people meet me and they're like, oh, you're so assertive and confident. Meanwhile, I'm just like, I don't think like I know I come off as confident, but I'm also like, you don't see the other side where I'm like chaotic and emotional and all these other
Right.
things. Love to see that. But I noticed that I had a tendency to like have these feelings build up and not communicate. And when I would, or like when I would choose that, it was more violent or like more aggressive, if that makes
Hmm.
sense, to like set this
Yeah.
boundary because I felt like it had been crossed. But
Right.
it's interesting because it sounds like the things are in opposition, but I actually don't think they are. Like I
Hmm.
think setting boundaries with grace is about giving your permission to one, like somehow setting a boundary feels violent for
Violent.
people that are always like
In
striving
it.
for perfection. Like,
Yes.
but yeah, that's I love that. I literally have the chills right now.
No, the whole setting boundaries with grace got me like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is going on a post-it note because that's insane. Like I learned how to set my boundaries 2 years ago,
Yep.
and with my therapist, she was just like, Kayla, I hear a lot of what you're doing for everybody else, but like I don't hear a lot of what you're doing for yourself. She
Yeah.
goes, and then you're coming onto these calls and you're talking about everybody else's problems
Yep.
and you're holding on to everybody else's stuff. But where are your boundaries? And I was like, what? What do you mean? I have boundaries. She's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't do what you did. I didn't do it gracefully. I was just like, oh, I don't. Now I
Yep.
see what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to be feeling. All right, boom. Like, it was just like hard wall. Like, it,
And I think that's like a necessary phase though, right? Like
it
you think
has to
about like a
happen.
kid learns, like you have to like just there's a certain level of like
Right.
self-preservation where you're like, fuck, like this is too much. Like everyone back up. Like back
Yeah.
up. I don't want to hear about it.
Yes.
Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. This is what it is.
Yes.
That's what it is. And then you get to a point where you're like, how do I, because I have like some of my best friends that do this so well. And I'm like, always like, I don't understand how like they can just like say no. And I still feel like as if they said, like I still just feel
Like
just as
that's it.
great. Like
Right. It's like,
I would be like,
oh,
sorry, it is what it is. I'm not going to show up, like kind of
that's me.
because again, like I think behind the scenes, I'm feeling guilty and I'm like, they should be making me feel guilty. They're not trying to make me feel guilty.
Right.
They just want me there. They just miss me.
Exactly.
And so it's like
Exactly.
learning to like not carry that guilt for not showing up how they might.
Exactly. And I think that's a lot of people's problems. Like everybody's people pleasing and, trying to be on everybody's good grace. But like what I learned is I looked for validation a lot
Yep.
because I always felt like I was wrong. Even though I could be doing the most perfect thing, I always felt like I was wrong. So it's like when you look for validation a lot, you also don't know how to set your boundaries because you feel like you have to ask people what they think. So it's like
Yep.
once I learned, like, Kayla, for the most part, you're not really wrong. You trust your intuition, and because you trust your intuition, for the most part, that's never wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like you gotta listen to that and stop looking for other people to tell you, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you should do this. It's like do it because you want to do it. Do it because it's something you know you need to do. And at that, keep people at an arm's distance because not everybody is excited for you like you are for yourself. Not everybody is praying for you how you think they're praying for you. So you
Yeah.
got to just allow yourself to be like, okay, yeah, like, no, I don't want to come out. Why? I just don't feel like it. And,
Yeah.
maybe the next time. But right now, I'm in my home, I'm in my zone, and I just want to appreciate that. And
And I
some
think
people will like literally be like,
like
all
you
right,
said, most people like I think people that are meant to be in whatever phase, whatever journey like you're at, like they get it. I have
yeah,
friends that like sometimes I don't see them for forever and they don't hold any grudges. And I have friends that, do feel some type of way when I'm not available, but like again, am I aligning to my values? If just being more available to them, like add to my life in a way that
my
I, need. And it sounds selfish, but
exactly.
it's not. It's kind of like, wait, but like, I like the quote. I wish I was this smart. I'm not this smart, but every yes that you give is a no to something else. So like if
Right.
I'm giving a person a yes, like what am I saying no to? Am I saying no to my stillness that I know I need to like
Need.
be creative? And if the answer is yeah, I'm gonna not have time for me, it has to be a no, every once in a while. Maybe not all the time. I'm still not over my people pleasing yet, but like I would love to say I'll get to a point where I can have all things. I think life is more around like resource lack management,
Hmm.
and like really understanding what the most important things are at any given point or any given day.
Yeah, it's about balance. It's about
Yeah.
balance, figuring out what to balance and how to balance it. But I think that's right. For every yes that you say is a no to something. And
Yeah.
right now, I'm not willing to say yes to things that don't align to what I'm trying to do. I'm
Yep.
just trying to spread my story as well as everybody else's story because at the end of the day, your story might not seem that great, but it might inspire somebody else that might be on the same path as you. So I enjoyed doing this and choosing me right now. My shirts that I created last year had be selfish, prioritize yourself.
I love
I,
that.
everybody was like, Kayla, that doesn't see. I'm like, think about it. It's okay to be selfish and prioritize yourself. Because in order for you to fill everybody else's cup, your cup got to be filled too.
I
So,
think too, like I remember talking to my mom Thanksgiving last year about how people learn. And like you could,
mhm,
like, if you're trying to like teach somebody, most of us don't learn when we're given advice.
right.
Like, we either learn by failing personally or by seeing someone else prove that it's possible. And
Hmm.
so, if you want to teach, like if you have an appetite for improving the world and teaching, you have to be selfish to do the things the way that you know they can be done so you can be evidence that that is possible. And so,
Right.
like, I do think it's important to like almost negotiate that with yourself when there is that guilt of like, oh, well, I can't be there. Like, not because I don't have, like, not because I have other plans, but because my plans are for me right now and I need that time. It's like
Hmm.
can't, you can't show up to inspire or to teach if you're not really at, I don't know, like your best self. I feel like that term at this point is like now oversaturated, but at the
It
version
is.
that you're
It
proud of.
is. It is. But like you said, it's a version that you're proud of. It's not even just being your best self, but being who you're truly meant to be.
Yep.
Well,
I like
Steph, I enjoy our time today. I enjoyed our conversation. You were full of so much insight and so much wisdom. I'm pretty sure I snapped like 4 or 5 times today.
I
And I'm
completely
I'm definitely gonna have like your words on post-its and like behind my desk because like I'm just like wow, like, and I'm so glad that we got to share your story today. And I pray that this does reach the hands that they're supposed to reach because there are so many people who could probably resonate with your story, but
yeah.
also who need that push and that reminder that you can do it too.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. This was
No
literally
problem, no problem, no problem. All I ask is that we cheers one more time
one
as
more
we,
for the one time.
yes, conclude our night. Thank you very much, Steph. This is Libation and Vibration. Thank you for watching, guys.
Thanks, Kay.
Perfect.